there's no way. I'm already so still burning. So hold me close now, baby. I do what I'm told, still learning to take my chances, to take my time, to keep on dancing, to walk that line, yeah. You got me shifting the paradigm, no longer wishing, you're my lucky strike. Love the way you ride, look into my eyes, say you're ready to go. $1 million life, we could roll the dice, act like you're surprised, but you already know. Oh yeah, got lucky overnight, jackpot when I got the invite. Let me wrap my arms around you, cause I can't go home without you. And my heart just vibe with you, babe. Wanna go sky high with you, babe. Gotta bring you close to tell you that you're my lucky strike. And I got to tell you, if you didn't know, then I got to tell you that you're my lucky strike. And I got to tell you, if you didn't know, then I got to tell you that you're my lucky strike. Cooler than cold, I'm all in. So load up the
All right. Well, hell, folks. Hello, folks. You know you're in for a treat when you hear that tune, because it's time for another week on the RecPoker podcast. This is episode 537, the Chats edition, where we get to talk to fun people in the poker world. We also have a forums edition every week, just talking poker strategy. I'm your host, Jim Reed, Bluff Storini in the home game, and at RecPoker Jim on Twitter. And I have the best freaking job in the world every Monday evening, talking poker with my friends here on the podcast at 7:30 Eastern, live on YouTube. And if you show up for free, like most of what we do here, it's free, but you can win a real prize just for coming and joining the fun. We're going to be talking to Wes Cannon and Max Havlish from the Suited Kings podcast in just a moment. But first, I have to thank our sponsors, the Running Aces Hotel, Racetrack, and Casino. We wouldn't be here without their support over the years. Most of what we do here is free. Like I say, we're a largely volunteer-based organization, so we depend on support from our sponsors and also from our amazing premium members who take part in our training material and study opportunities for only $15 a month. Premium members, like, we got 4 new ones since we were last on the air together. Steve Catterson, you might know him as Chip Extractor. I know I have for a long time. So Steve, thanks for your support. I can't wait to get to know you a little better. Eric Weinraub, who recently got to a couple final tables and credits some tips he heard on the forums edition of the podcast for his success. Brian Gartman, who I think I was playing with recently at a Run Good event. And Bob Franklin, related to Benjamin Franklin. I happen to know that because I had dinner with the man just last week. Bob's a fantastic guy who's going to lend some great insights to the rest of the premium membership here. So Steve, Eric, Brian, and Bob, thank you so much for your support. Your $15 a month makes a huge difference to what we're doing here. And I love welcoming our new members here to RecPoker. So look for an email from me setting up some a one-on-one visit and a chance to get the most out of your membership. All right, now, they let me host the show on Mondays, but I'm only one man. It takes a group to do what we do here, a village, a crew. We call this group of wizards the Wrecking Crew. If you want to find out more about me and the other members of the Wrecking Crew, you can go to rec.poker/crew. But you can just listen up because you're going to meet a few of them right here on the air tonight, starting with producing co-host Chris Jones.
Well, I'm Chris Jones. You can find me 5B5 on Twitter or 5x5 in the PokerStars home game.
And I'm Joe Coolis. You can find me at JoeCoolPhD at X or Twitter, whichever you prefer to call it, or Elvita11 in the home game.
And I'm John Somsky, also known as Poker Geek MN everywhere. And I'm Rob Washam, and you can find me as Rabman50 just about everywhere.
All right. Well, you're here with the group. Like I say here at RecPoker, we play for fun, but it's more fun when you win. So we study together, we play together, we celebrate together, and it all starts with a free membership at rec.poker, where all it takes is an email address and a smile. So let us welcome in Wes Cannon and Max Havlish. Wes, you're no stranger to the show. You've been on before. Max, welcome to what I believe is your inaugural appearance on the RecPoker podcast.
It actually isn't.
Oh, I was gonna say, I think you were actually on back in the day, right? When
Probably
Steve
like
was
2018 or so. Matt Hamilton and I did like a panel thing.
I remember. I've Steve had a few different formats for this back as he was putting it together, and it all kind of led to this panel plan, this community group, which is how we do everything now.
But thank you.
Well, welcome back, my man. This is fantastic. So we usually only have one guest on here. I think you guys will have to decide sort of who answers what. But Max, let me start with you because some of our listeners already know Wes's story a little bit. He's been on more recently. You're a Minnesota guy. You're a tournament specialist. You've cashed very successfully over your time playing poker. Now you've started this podcast with Wes, which I'm interested in talking a little more about. But if our audience doesn't know you, how would you kind of describe your own place in the poker world right now?
Yeah, I guess I'm just, I grind MSPTs pretty much strictly at this time of day. I do have a couple of other jobs. I'm a realtor full time. I work for Medtronic part time. So those kind of stop me from playing dailies. So you won't see me at the dailies as much anymore. I used to grind those where a lot of people who might be watching this might not remember me from. But unfortunately, I don't have the time for those days. So you'll see me on the weekends traveling to MSPTs.
Nice. And that sounds like you've kind of had an ascension as a player, where you're making time for these bigger ticket tournaments. Let me ask you first, how did it come about? What was the feeling like when you decided, oh, you know what, I'm gonna flip the switch here, and I'm gonna what were the telltale signs to you that made you decide that it was time to take this more seriously and go after these bigger events?
It started off just kind of playing, the $200 double stacks at aces, and I would build up a roll, and then I'd punt it back to them after, you know what I mean? Hey, full disclosure, you know what I mean? No, but I learned a lot of lessons in poker during those times, and then again, I have other forms of income which allows me to more easily play the higher buy-in events. But yeah, managing my bankroll has probably been the biggest thing that's allowed me to switch to MSPTs. And start playing bigger buy-ins. You know what I mean? Not just having $1,100 to my name and saying, let's fire it.
Yeah, nice. Well, I'm just going to remind our audience, if you have any questions for Max or Wes, to type them into the YouTube chat, and I'll make sure that, or Chris will make sure that we get them asked. And if anyone here on the Wrecking Crew has any questions, just unmute and we'll jump in there. Also, YouTube audience members, we're going to need some names of poker players into the YouTube chat so we can start our stake study stack game that we'll be playing with Wes and Max later. And I want to just remind that we've made it. You can now send us super chats in the YouTube. So if you do want to send us a little donation using the super chat feature of the YouTube platform, we'll be sharing a portion of that donation with a local food bank because we like to support food banks here. We'll be having a raffle at the end of the show for folks that stick around. Show up for the show for free, and you can win a real prize just for showing up in our food bank raffle at the end. All right, thank you so much for that, allowing me to continue on my little soapbox there for a while. So Max, let me stick with you for one more question here.
Yeah.
In fact, I remember Steve and I talking about your progress as a player, like back in the day. I know you're someone that a lot of players in Minnesota have looked up to and for coaching and for advice and for like talking about the game. What made you and Wes decide that it was time to buckle up and start this new exciting podcast venture?
Yeah, it kind of came out of nowhere. Wes and I actually have only been friends for about a year now. Him and I have been familiar with each other through poker. It started, I think, last November-ish or December-ish. What was it, Wes? Was it the MSPT?
No, you know what it was? So it was day 2 of the Avalanche, which I think was like
That's what it was.
January.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
we sat next to each other and you were about to go to Colorado for the MSPT. And you said, hey, like I have a comped room. If you're going to go, do you want to like travel with me? And that's when we started traveling together, was like right at the start of this year.
Yeah, yeah. So, I knew Wes was, a strong poker player, and I always like to try and pick the brains of, people who I look up to, and Wes immediately impressed me. So, we became friends quickly, and then we started traveling to pretty much every MSPT together. And I remember we were hanging out in the hotel room one day. I don't remember what stop it was at, but he came back from playing, and he's like, "We should start a podcast," just out of nowhere. And I actually have a background in music production.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so I have my own home studio and stuff like that. So I didn't have to really do any of the back end learning. I already knew how to work all that. So I was like, I can throw that together, no problem. And boom, Suited Kings was born.
Yeah. Yeah. And so giving my perspective on, where that idea came from, there's a time probably a few weeks before that. We had like Max and I did sort of a virtual study session. We just like looked at a couple hands from videos and then maybe one or two of our own. And we had another buddy who joined us, but I just remember Max and I we chatted about one or two hands for like over a half hour.
Yeah.
And I don't know when I came up with the idea, but I was like, this could easily be something we just record and people enjoy listening to. And then I remember I said that, we could start a podcast, and Max's first reaction was like, I didn't have a read on what his first reaction was, but then the rest of that trip, like the next 5 times that it got brought up, it was Max being like, hey, we need a really good name for our podcast. And then he was like asleep and he just wakes up and is like, Wes, write this down. Suited Kings. That's the name of our podcast.
Yes.
I literally woke up out of a dead sleep and told him.
Yes. I love that. So I love it. Some of my favorite things have like occurred to me in a dream. It's just like you wake up and that's it. So that I can tell that's something that's that you're onto there.
We just knew it.
Amazing. Yeah. Now, Minnesota has sent a lot of fantastic poker players up through the ranks. I think it outperforms a lot of other states, like disproportionately given how many people are in the state. So that makes kind of like a small world a little bit. I've kind of thought of you guys almost as sort of competitors. You're playing in a lot of the same player pools. You're directly competing with each other from tournament to tournament. Poker is the kind of game where it's a lone wolf at the table game, but it's better to have a pack away from the tables. Can you talk a little bit about that experience of kind of being competitors, but also helping each other get better?
Go ahead, Wes.
Yeah. I mean, so I guess we've actually played at the same table a few times.
It's usually kind of crazy.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. I mean,
there's no soft play. We'll put it that way.
Yeah. No, if anything with us, it's the opposite. Like there's a cash game where Max 5-bet jam 200 big blinds, and I fold my ace-3 suited that I 4-bet. He shows a 5, and I'm like, you were probably ahead. Like,
I had ace-5 suited.
Yeah,
we're going Euro on each other.
Yeah, so it's never really been an issue. I think if you have a friend who you play with and you have an urge to like you don't want to take each other's money, I feel like that's usually if it's someone who's not taking poker seriously. Like if let me put it this way, like Max and I, we never feel bad about like winning a big one off each other, because we both encourage each other, and it's the competitive juices flowing. And
literally there's never been an ounce of salt when one of us has lost a pot to the other person. Yeah, no, I mean, we understand that we're with the game we play, and that's how it works. And like you said, we're friends away from the table and we're competitors at the table. So
those are the best friends. Like one of my good buddies, Greg, I've known since high school. We play very competitively against each other in most things, but in golf every year we have like this Golden Crown tournament, and we want to break each other. But like, but it's all fun, and we get along outside of it. But those best friends, I think, are the ones that you can really compete with, and it's about sort of like respecting their game and not playing it easy on them, and two people trying their hardest. That's the best competition, I think, out there.
Yeah. Well, and then there are times when we've been at the same table and, we still very much root for each other when we're not against each other. I remember, I think it was day 2 in Michigan, like a month ago.
Firekeepers, yeah.
Yeah, Max won an all-in against this guy who had, we kind of viewed as like the fish
I
of
remember this.
he was the fish of the table, but he had been just winning every pot. And I just send Max a text like, sometimes they got to learn the hard way.
I love this. I love it.
Yeah,
That's awesome. Well, we've got a few people in the YouTube chat. I just want to shout out here. 2 of our new premium members, Bob and Steve. Thank you for being here. And great to see Dana Craven again, too. That's fantastic. Dana, thanks for stopping by again. And I see we're getting some names for Stake Study Stack, so keep throwing those names out there, folks. That's fantastic. So Wes and Max, you guys can decide how to answer this. You've started this new podcast. It's fantastic. People love it. If people haven't listened to it yet, what can they expect? How did you guys decide on like the format, and tell our listeners sort of like what a typical podcast is like for you guys?
Wes, I'll start it off. So our format is, it's funny though, because when we did our first episode, a bunch of people reached out and they're like, well, like, what are you going to do? What's your format? How is this? And I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to do whatever we want to do. And then as time goes, we'll kind of let it dial into what seems to fit the best. You know what I mean? So we started off doing an interview with Wes, winning, 200K at the WSOP, where it was like an interview type thing with Wes. Then we went straight into strategy and talked about, some deep diving into hands and stuff like that. We've been just kind of deep strategy and interviews, and then also things that poker can do for us outside of poker, right? So it's been all over the place. And I think for now, we're just going to stick with that format. Everybody seems to like it, and it's a little bit of something for everybody, because those deep strategy podcasts, a lot of the beginner players who aren't quite there yet, they have trouble following with those, but they enjoy the interviews where they can see how people got invested into it. And so just a little something for everybody.
Yeah, and I think my idea with it is like, I want to give, maybe like, if you take me 5 years ago, for example, like what would I like to listen to, and what would be helpful to me if I know I want to get better at poker? And so part of that is the strategy component, but then part of it is also like, apart from just knowing when to use blockers or when to triple barrel bluff, like when I'm at the table, like if I'm feeling really nervous, like, is that normal, or what can I do to work on, playing, to actually like executing all these strategies? Because I feel like there are 2 components. There's knowing the strategy, and then there's actually executing it in the moment. And so stuff like, well, if you're feeling too nervous, maybe you haven't practiced enough, maybe you're playing too high for your bankroll. Like, so my view of it is just like having all these little components of playing poker and giving people like a realistic idea of what it's actually like to take it seriously.
Yeah. We don't get too, each topic seems to be pretty dialed into one specific or 2 specific things, and we stick to that for, the whole hour. And yeah, there's so much things you can cover in poker. So we look forward to, like, I think this week we're going to drop in. Last week we did an episode on when to double and triple barrel as a bluff. That was a lot of fun. This week, I think our episode this week is going to be on proper C betting, like when and when not to C bet. And then we might hop back into an interview with a special guest after that.
Nice.
Yeah.
I'm getting a note that Taylor Moss's daughters are currently waving at the screen, so we should all wave hello to 2 beautiful little blonde girls.
Hey, shout out to Taylor, by the way. Taylor's a crusher, man. That guy's
he's on such a streak right now, too. The guy is killing
nice
it. Yeah. Well done, Taylor. We don't like to say nice things about Taylor on the show here too often, but every once in a while,
human being.
But just a beast out there, and kicking some serious butt. So way to go, Taylor Moss. Keep it up, man. So what do you guys do now to get better at poker? You've studied, different ways throughout your career. You've moved from recreational to professional players. Once you kind of plugged all the easy leaks, all the low-hanging fruit, do you still study? How do you study? And sort of what are some insights that you've gained recently?
Never stop studying. Rule
Mhm.
number one. Go ahead, Wes. Go ahead, take it away.
Yeah, I do a few different things. And I think the best way to look at it is like, yeah, you take care of the low hanging fruit, you plug all those big holes, but then you just realize like there are always going to be holes in your game. And so you're always just trying to plug the next biggest one.
Yeah, as
so
you
to
plug
speak.
one, a new one pops. You know what I mean? Like you see, or at least you finally see
Yeah.
that it's flooding. You know what I mean?
Once you
Mhm.
take care of the big ones, then you notice the small ones because they're like still the biggest ones.
Yeah.
So what I'll do a few different things. I use GTO Wizard and GTO X, but I use those a lot less than I think people would think. I also recently I've been watching Inside the Mind of a Pro, which actually Jeremy
Mm.
Becker recommended to us when we interviewed him. I think it's super valuable to see um, these top level players, how they play hands and what their thought process is. In the past, I've watched like some super high roller bowls and stuff, because I think it's great to watch those types of players navigate those fields. But then when you get the component of actually having them walk through it, I think that's super valuable. And actually, one way I improved my online cash game skills a lot this year was watching a streamer who was one of the best in the games I played in. And so for me, it's getting a mixture of, learning, seeing how this strategy is actually implemented at the table, and seeing why they deviate from it at certain times too. Yeah, so a few different
Yeah.
things, but that's mostly it.
That's
I
good. Yeah,
think-
Chris has
yeah.
been a big fan of that Inside the Mind of a Pro series. We've used that for some elements before. It's a fantastic series. There is no substitute for like hearing people talk about their thought process in real time, right?
Especially people like Adrian Mateos.
Right.
Yeah.
Like the biggest crushers in the world.
Yeah. And actually, I think and Max can speak to this too, but that's almost what, we're not Adrian Mateos, not yet, but our podcast, maybe it can be a little bit of it can be kind of like that, where people who are wanting to get better listen to how we think through different hands.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yep.
Yep,
Definitely.
I love that. Chris, you've got something, I think.
Yeah, no, that you're speaking my language with Inside the Mind of the Pro. I think it's the best poker content out there. Really, I get excited every time that this series comes out. I know that they did another one this year, so I can't wait till it comes out again. Question is kind of based on a comment that came from Chip Extractor in the chat. He writes, I've debated for years if I should transition into tournament play from almost exclusively live cash. I feel as if my window for doing so is closing. Many factors contribute to that feeling. But I feel like some of our audience has that feeling on both sides of the fence. Maybe they've played mostly exclusively tournaments, but they're kind of curious, like, should I be playing some cash to sort of like build a bankroll, supplement, the variance side of it, or they're maybe more of a cash game player and they're kind of curious about, man, maybe I should take some shots in some tournaments. You're both players who do both sort of disciplines. What would you say to somebody who's maybe much more experienced, a recreational player who's sort of much more experienced in one side of the fence or the other, and what kinds of things they should be thinking about if they're wanting to dip their toe and get a little bit better, a little bit more experienced, either on the cash side or on the tournament side?
I just want to say something before you answer, Wes, because I'm gonna let Wes answer this because he's definitely more of a cash game player than I. I actually started playing. I mean, I've always played cash, but I started diving into online cash lop this year due to some coaching from Wes that's helped me out a lot. There's a lot of changes that you kind of got to take into consideration, but I want to say that it definitely has helped. Keep my bank account or my bankroll, padded when I'm playing tournaments. You can bust a couple tournaments, run it up with cash. Sometimes it doesn't always work that way, but it seems to be something that will keep my bankroll continuously like staying level or helping it grow a little bit more. Sorry, Wes, go ahead now.
Oh yeah, yeah. Yeah, definitely accurate. Like the cash games will have lower variance. My initial thought when hearing that question though is like, which one, to the person who asked the question, like which one are you going to feel more motivated to get better at? Like which one do you enjoy more? Because for me, I think that tends to be the case. Like I probably used to be more of a cash game player, got a little more into tournaments, had my first big score, and then once that happens, I was like probably 80 or 90% tournaments forever. This year I've gotten, I've studied cash a little bit more, and it definitely like has helped me, and it does help. The variance in cash is much lower, but yeah, I think the biggest thing is whichever one you're going to enjoy more. And so I'll have times when I just like am a little more into cash or tournaments or even live versus online. The general things. So if you're someone who did the person asking, did they say if they play more cash or tournaments now?
They currently play more cash and they're considering
Okay.
transitioning into tournaments.
Yeah. So the biggest thing for that person to, think about is like, if you're playing 2-5 cash, $500 buy-ins or something, the proper bankroll, and if you have a job that pays for all, like you don't need to stick to this exactly, but as far as like maintaining a good bankroll, the buy-ins you should be playing for tournaments would be more like $100 or $150 or something. And so you're just going to have a lot more days where you end up losing. And as far as what you need to study, make sure focus like all your time basically on learning how to play with 40 blinds or less. Because one thing, someone who plays cash a lot will get into tournaments and you're not at 100 big blinds for very long, even if you're doing well. And it's important to not have that feeling of needing to always have a big stack, because there's no person who always has a big stack, and you just need to dive into learning how to play like 40, 30, 20, 10 big blinds. And then also ICM is very hard to study, but at least like try and learn a little bit and figure out what sort of adjustments to make when you're both near the money bubble and then when you're at the final table.
Yeah, I like that. Specifically, Steve's asking about sort of the ability to maintain focus for a long period of time. And this is something that comes up a lot for some of our recreational players who just aren't used to grinding live MTTs. And that's the one difference that leaps out to everybody is cash games. You can sit down, stand up, take a break, miss some hands. Like the stakes are pretty low. In a tournament, you really have to seize every bit of EV out of every hand that you're dealt, or so say I. What do you guys have tips for how to kind of budget your focus and maintain that ability to not just kind of brain fart your way out of the tournament on hour 8 of a 10-hour day? Because there's no worse feeling than that.
It definitely takes a lot to get out of, and I occasionally, I still, not often, but occasionally will be like, what the hell will happen there? Because I lost focus. Deep in a tournament where I made a small mistake, but it ended up costing me hugely, right? I remember listening to a master class with Darren Elias, with Wes actually on a road trip one time. One of his biggest tips was to, periodically, whether, you can set your own time parameters, but like, take a step back, remember what, step back from the tournament. Although you're sitting there, think about where you're at in the tournament, whether it be the entry stage, the middle stage, the bubble, the late stage, the end game, right? And then remind yourself, this is where I'm at in the tournament. How many big blinds do I have? What role do I play at this point? And then continuously step back throughout the rest of the tournament and remind yourself of that to kind of start back over again. You know what I mean?
Yep, I think that's a great way to do it. What are some common mistakes? So you've both progressed through the ranks. You've obviously improved your play a lot. You play with a mix of other players and different experience levels. I guess I have 2 questions for you. The first one is, what are some actions that players make at the table that make you say, oh, this is a less experienced player? there's something I can do to take advantage of this person's ignorance or lack of experience? What are some actions that kind of telegraph that? And how can we as recreational players play a little defense and make that less obvious?
Sure.
Go ahead, Wes. Go ahead.
First one that comes to mind for me is making pre-flop raise sizes that are significantly different based on what's in your hand, or even just what like mood you're, you know what I mean? It could be
and not balancing it if you're aware of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a big one. I would say talking about your strategy in a given hand. Because I think one thing that recreational players will do, and I've done this before, is you make a play and then either it doesn't work and you say, oh, I thought you had this specific hand. And it's like, me as a pro, I don't even usually put someone on a specific hand. So I just know, I'm like, no, you didn't. You're just trying to make yourself sound good or justify it. And like, just know that you don't need to do that. Like I make mistakes. It's like, just be okay with making the wrong play sometimes, and don't like, whether it's your true inner monologue or you're just trying to like justify a play, just don't talk about what your strategy was, you know?
Those are the two biggest ones I was going to say, is literally bet sizing, talking. I mean, and yes, sharing strategy. Sharing strategy is fine. I mean, don't think that you don't ever have to do it. If you're sitting there talking with someone and you kind of want to like, jot about or talk about a hand as, just to talk about it, that's fine. Like, don't not talk about poker at the table. I mean, but you definitely don't berate players on how they played a hand. Like, another thing is, I think players who tilt is a good tell of, I mean, everybody has a level of tilt, but those who openly show it, or it clearly changes their actions. I think that's one of the bigger skills are leaks to plug quick or earlier in your game.
Yeah, good one. I'm going to keep on this kind of catering to less experienced players line for a second here, and I'll just encourage our YouTube chatters to type any more questions that you've got in there. We've got these two guys for a little longer, and we want to extract as much from their brains as we possibly can. Recreational players, we like typically, we kind of play more passively. We play wider ranges. We like to make hands. We like to know that we've made a hand before we proceed. And so we tend to take a lot of like limping and calling lines pre-flop. Obviously, we should do that less. That being said, are there particular hands or type of hands that you'd say, oh, it's all right, it's okay if you call in position and don't just raise or fold? And like, what do those hands or types of hands have in common that I can give our listeners permission to occasionally just like call and see a flop?
I'll start this one, Wes, because we actually just had a conversation about this not long ago. But like, it's typically, you don't want to limp later in tournaments, mostly, like especially when antes are up, and I mean, just taking down the pot is worth so much later in stages of tournaments. Whereas when everybody's hundreds, 200 big blinds deep in early stages, limping can be okay. I think there's a few things you want to pay attention to. One is position. Having position, later position is always going to be helpful because you can see what's going on in front of you. Secondly is, and Wes might disagree with this. I know he did before, but like hands that would more limp are suited like aces and kings types hands, where I'm gonna end up coolering people more than they're cooling me. Whereas like 5-6, 5-8, smaller suited connectors hands, you're gonna end up finding yourself getting coolered more. Those are just kind of basic thoughts on the idea.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. That was mainly my answer too. I think the point about it not doing it like late in the tournament. So one thing to keep in mind is, so in cash games, you'll probably always be deep, and then tournaments, you're going to be deep earlier on. And when you're deep, it's okay to see, hands like, suited aces, suited connectors can be okay suited too. Kings, and then like,
sorry, go ahead.
and then the small pocket pairs. So all of these hands have more value when you and your opponents have a lot more blinds, because
the implied value.
Yeah, the implied odds, they don't have that much immediate value. So like, if you're 100 big blinds deep in a tournament, you might want to fold ace-9 offsuit in early position, but then I would be raising, but you can limp like ace deuce suited or pocket threes or something like that, and it's not that bad. But if you're late in the turn, if let's say you and your opponents all have like 15 to 20 blinds, you just want to fold the small pairs and then open the ace nine offsuit. So like the deeper you are, the more implied odds those sort of
Exactly. Yep.
yeah, those types of hands have. And so those would be the ones that if you want to limp, or like if someone raises, you can just flat with. And what I will say too is if there are a bunch of limps before me, I will do over limping. So I will limp when there are already limpers. And that will usually be with, like small pairs, suited ace, suited king, suited connectors.
And to follow up with that, our goal is to either, we're set mining or flop either a massive draw to, and then even if we do flop a massive draw, we're not trying to get in hundreds of big blinds at that point with it. We're trying to connect with our flushes and then get our chips in.
Yeah, so we're kind of like set mining and draw mining, essentially.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and that's only really effective when you're
time.
deep. Yeah, I like that a lot. I got one more question, then I'm going to turn it over to Chris. So you've talked a bit about sort of like this would be the range that I take with this. These are the kind of hands we want to have for this kind of an action. How do you decide whether you need to be balanced in a certain spot or whether you can just take an exploitative line? And like typically the way that we find ourselves, in my experience in these moments, is it's not with the value hands, because we know we're going to be taking the aggressive line with the value hands a lot. So the question is like, when do we sprinkle in the balancing hands, and how important is it to do it? And then how do you decide that it's important to do it on a case-by-case basis?
I think it's going to be less important in dailies and things like that, where there's going to be a lot more amateur players. Not to say you shouldn't be balancing like that, but I think those are going to be areas where you don't have to worry about it as frequently. I say compared to like playing, you'll find amateurs in all buy-ins of tournaments, but more so compared to like MSPTs in Vegas, for example.
Yeah. Wes, did you
have I think so. Definitely agree with what Max said. I actually don't even think of it in terms of balance per se anymore. I think of it in terms of situations where I want to bluff, or I just know the person, if they're betting, they have a good hand, So I think of like, if you take, pre-flop, for example, ace five and ace four suited are like the well-known, like these are your 4-bet bluff type of hands. And I'll do it if I think someone themselves is quote unquote balanced, if they 3-bet me with enough weak hands. But I just think of it more like, okay, is this someone who I should be trying to bluff? And then the hand that I have is more of a secondary consideration. And actually, I'll give Max some credit for this. Like I've come more from the, charts and theory background, I think, compared to most people in the Minnesota poker scene. But like, I feel like Max is like this hardcore feel player who he's going for it. And yeah, no, it's true. And I feel like that's like helped me realize like, okay, no, like I should lean into more of that too, because so I would say like, I don't even think in terms of being balanced anymore, especially in any sort of live cash or tournament. But when I'm deciding if I should bluff, like I look for properties of certain hands where I'm like, okay, this hand makes a good bluff, so I can go for it. Or like, well, this one is an okay bluff, but I think he often has nothing here. So, so there are a lot of considerations.
Yeah. No, that's good. And some of those qualities would be like blocker value, playability if called, like that kind of thing. And you're just sort of deciding on a case-by-case basis, are they folding enough that I want to be doing it with some of these other hands? Is that right?
Yeah, and I want to mention one more quick thing on it is don't worry about it too much, because the more you overthink it, the more you're going to put yourself in dumb spots.
Yep.
And I think we found our clip for the episode, guys. Yeah, Wes, you wanted to wrap that up, I think.
Yeah, and the one last thing is when you look at like a solver and when you see the hands it's going to bluff or the hands it's going to bluff catch with, the difference between these different hands is often like a, less than a tenth of a big blind or something. And that's just so small compared to if you know even something, a small assumption about your opponent, that will move the needle so much more than like one blocker in terms of if your decision is profitable or not.
Yeah. I remember Thinking Poker podcast, which is like, the poker podcast in my mind. That was my first podcast I started listening to. Andrew's talked a lot about it. They move an inch, we move a mile. And like, that's where they're going out of line. That's where you, deviate yourself and not to worry too much about this other stuff. So I like that way of thinking about it. Joe Coolis, you had something, I think.
Yeah, so you guys are both from Minnesota, and when you're podcasting, sometimes you'll come across people who just kind of state these very off the wall colloquialisms, like you're going to clean someone's gutter or something. How do you make sure that both of you are consistent with something the audience can understand, so that everybody's with you?
Yeah,
that's probably the hardest part about the podcast.
Yeah. So I actually don't know, like I think about that sometimes, but it's not like, I don't even know if we do a good job of that, to be honest.
I try to clear things up because oftentimes our jargon is a little bit too much for people. So I try to like step in and be like, well, this is what this means. And this is what this means. But you can't, hopefully that helped or answered.
Yeah. So a serious question beyond busting Jim Stones on the air and every opportunity that I can get, is, how do you, so you're two guys who have, decided to do a podcast because you've probably done some coordination in terms of play and talking hands and things like that. And sometimes when, particularly when new players, they get into groups of people, the problem is that, if you're taking, for instance, Assassinato's strategy versus Brocus's strategy versus anybody else's strategy in terms of how to play different hands, you can end up with a lot of different strategy. You can end up with a lot of different starting hands or charts and things like that. What kind of recommendations would you make to the recreational player about how to manage those differences of opinion when they may not completely understand the theories that underlie what it is that they're trying to implement at the table?
That's a good question. So here's what I'll say in terms of something like pre-flop, because I feel like what I'll say is it gets harder the later you go in a hand. You know what I mean? So as far as pre-flop charts, there are a lot of different pre-flop charts out there. There's some differences, but the places where each of them are different are going to be so close to each other in EV that like, those are the hands where it's like you should make a decision more based off of your opponents in the game rather than trying to copy a specific chart, And yeah, I think the other thing to keep in mind, and then Max, you can add on, is like even people who are winning players are still always trying to learn the game. And there are a lot of different ways that you can be a strong player, and you can be very strong in certain aspects, and then you can have a couple, have certain types of weaknesses that you're winning in spite of, but like, so just, there's not always just one right answer in poker.
I feel like
so many variables.
Yep. All right, Chris Jones, I think we've got some questions from the YouTube chatters, and then we'll wrap this baby up.
Yeah, Max and Wes, we got two questions from the YouTube chat. I'm going to ask them in reverse order because one of them's, I think, a shorter answer. But what is, from the RRCCC, wants to know, what is each of your favorite MSPT stop?
Deadwood.
God. Why is that? Just you final table it twice to back to back?
Yeah. I mean, well, that's the one reason. But also, I think Deadwood's just beautiful. Like Riverside's the other one where I've had a big score, but Riverside's kind of, I don't know. I think Deadwood's just beautiful. And yeah, the town has this unique vibe. And yeah, I final tabled 2 out of the first 3 times I've been there. So There's that too.
Yeah, that didn't help in that decision though. It was just strictly the beauty of Deadwood. Anything in Iowa, I pretty much love the most. I
You
miss.
won one in Iowa.
I did. And that stop isn't even around anymore. I won the Tama, Iowa stop, Meskwaki Casino in 2017 or 18. But Riverside and Grand Falls are probably my two favorite stops. Number one, because they're easy to get to, 3 to 5 hours between the two of them. Secondly, it's like nowhere else. Like the type of play you get all the best and the worst there, and you just see all the types of players, and it's I mean, I don't want to talk crap about people, but it's soft.
It's not nothing wrong with finding some soft spots in a
I was trying to find a nice way to say that, but there you go.
All right, our last question, and you can choose to answer this any way you want. I know sometimes you don't have to answer this exactly, but Chip Extractor's wondering about opinions on staking, swapping, selling action. And really his question ultimately is it even possible to move up in stakes without doing one of these? And I guess that's going to deter based on your sort of financial sort of background and bankroll and whatever. But what are your thoughts about those sort of how as you move up in stakes, whether you need to employ or understand or start to use things like swaps and stakes and that kind of thing?
I think a lot of people kind of, well, not a lot of people, but some people look down on selling action or getting staked, or they think like, I don't know. I just hear it a lot in the high roller community specifically. I mean, you expect these people to put up $100,000 of their own money every time, like you'll go broke immediately. But even in 1Ks or even in 500s or even in 250s, like, do what's most comfortable for your bankroll where it won't affect you mentally. And I've been through staking deals. I've been through selling action. I've been through all of that. And I think it's a healthy way to play bigger stakes and kind of get used to those fields without having to take too much risk on.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally agree. It's like, I think you said it perfectly, Max. Like, do whatever will make you mentally the most comfortable with playing at those stakes. However you said that, I thought was good. I will also say I do think it is possible to move up without that stuff, but I think, I mean, I've done plenty of it. I also think there's, and this is based on my own experience too. Like, if you, start doing well, if you have a big score too, like maybe don't look to just jump up in stakes. Maybe stay at the same stakes, but then just don't sell, because that financially that's still the same thing, but you're playing against softer competition than if you were to have moved up. And so, and and I think in the Midwest, for example, it's like most of the tournaments we're going to have access to are capped at like 1100, 1700. So maybe for me, that's more of a, now that I've already been playing those, like I don't need to travel for 5Ks or something. But I think like if you're looking at it in terms of trying to be the most profitable, like recognize that sometimes just staying in the game you were already in, just playing for all yourself, that can be like the best way to go.
And Wes, if I'm understanding you correctly, one of the things you're saying is that if you decide to go up in stakes, say you double the size of the events that you're playing, but you're selling half your action, you're actually kind of playing the same stake, but against a much tougher field. So if you're going to be, it would be more effective, and don't let me put words in your mouth, but it would either be more effective to move even higher if you're going to get staked, or to play your own action at your own level, own your own action. And is there a way to like decide incrementally how to do that, or would you say just like take a smaller piece or take a bigger piece? Or I guess the answer is every person's different, but are there any like guidelines that you can think of?
I'm not like, I don't have a very specific formula for it. There's still times when I'll like I won't always have the exact same percentage of myself in every tournament I play. And it could just be like, a buddy of mine, wants to buy like 2% for fun, or like if Max and I go to a tournament together and play the same tournament, like we're probably going to swap a little bit or something. But if I went alone, I wouldn't look to like sell that same percentage to someone else.
Right.
Yeah. So no, I would say generally, and it's so different if you do it professionally versus recreationally. Like if you have a job, you don't really need to stick to, very rigid bankroll constrictions, which I think applies to the vast majority of people who are going to be listening to this. And so I would just say, like, do it however you can go into it and be okay. Like if you lose a few buy-ins, not really feel too bad about it.
Yeah, again,
Mhm.
just do what feels comfortable to you. Again, one thing I want to iterate on all aspects of poker is, don't overcomplicate it. Do what feels right. Do what feels good for you. And I mean, you don't have to, I remember sitting there thinking like, oh, well, my bankroll I have to have 100 buy-ins to play this event. And it's like, you know what, like, that's just a small example, but like, you don't necessarily need to have that. That's just a soft guideline that can maybe help out. So.
Yeah, that's good. That's good advice, guys. All right. Well, I really appreciate your time. We're gonna move on to our new segment here at the end of the show. Max, you've got a lot on the go over there. I can tell already right now. So this is this is a stake study stack. So I'm gonna give you. You may remember from your youth a game where you would marry someone and then do something else to someone else, and then do something else even differently to a third person. In this one, you're going to choose one person you can stake in a tournament, one person, or in a cash game, one person you can study with, and one person you can stack at the tables. And I'm going to give you three names. And Max, why don't you go first, and then we'll hear from Wes. The three names are, and we're going to go Minnesota only edition here, I think.
Sorry, stake, stack, and what was it?
Study. Stake,
Okay.
study, and stack. All right. Okay. So Robbie Waz, Matt Hamilton, and Ku Vang. Max, who do you stake, who do you study with, and who do you stack?
I stake Waz. I study. Oh man, this is. I'm gonna stack Matt Hamilton. I don't know. Matt's a good friend of mine, by the way. And study was the last one, right? Definitely with Ku. I would love to study with Ku. Yeah.
What about you, Wes?
So I don't really know Matt. So this might not be as great of an answer. So I'd probably just stack him because I don't know him, so whatever.
Sorry, Matt. I'm sorry.
Double stack.
Yeah. I know I've already stacked both the other guys at least once or twice, so it's not
nice.
I've had the experience.
Yeah, got to complete the set.
Yeah. Stake and study. That's an interesting one. I think I would same answer where I would study with Ku, because I feel like his game is so.
Rob is much more of a field player. It's harder to understand a field player's strategy than it is someone who can.
Agreed. Like I would be happy staking either one of them. I guess the answer would be, but I would rather
all
study
three of them. Honestly, Matt is a crusher.
Yeah. Well, I learned something then. But yeah, I would study with Ku because I feel like, especially online, he is such a technically sound player, and I could learn some stuff from him.
All right.
Well, I mean, you saw who started studying with him and then became a World Series of Poker Player of the Year.
Right. Yep. Exactly.
100%.
Yeah, we're gonna have Mr. Matekas back on the show sometime soon, I hope. Speaking of great players coming out of the state of Minnesota, that's fantastic.
Incredible and a good guy.
Yep. All right, well then it's time for the speed round, gentlemen.
Okay.
I think so. We'll reverse the order. So I'm going to ask a bunch of very short questions. Wes, you can go first, and then Max. And no rationalizing, no pontificating. I just want short, quick answers. The first thing that comes into your mind, got to be true. Okay, here we go. Dim the lights. All right, starting with Wes. What's your favorite poker hand?
Aces.
God.
Max?
Jack 10 suited.
Is poker a gamble or a skill game?
Skill game.
90% skill.
What's your biggest poker pet peeve, Wes?
People complaining about the results.
Max?
B Raiders.
Is Die Hard a Christmas movie?
No idea.
Absolutely. Yes, it is.
Is Ace King a drawing hand, Wes?
Everything's a drawing hand.
Ah, Max?
No.
We already asked this one. Sorry, I got a new one in here. Wes, what's your favorite childhood family holiday meal?
Lasagna.
Max?
Spaghetti.
What's your favorite mixed game, Wes?
Wes doesn't
Barely play them,
games.
but-
Yeah.
But stud. 7-card stud.
Max?
Omaha 8.
Is a hot dog a sandwich?
No.
No.
What's your favorite color?
Purple.
Blue.
Yellow light coming up. Slow down or speed up?
Am
Speed
I in
up.
a rush?
Max, you would speed up.
All
Max is more
right.
speed up
I mean, is it
Um,
red? I'm still going through it. No. I'm just kidding.
All right, we're getting to the end here. Wes, who is your poker nemesis?
Martin Zamani.
Oh, yes. Yes.
This is a good one. Same
Wes
for you, Max?
Wes Cannon. Wes Cannon.
Let's get good choice. Good choice. Wes, are you pro chop or no chop?
Slightly pro.
Max?
Slightly less, but do what's right for you.
Should vacations be lazy or busy? Wes?
Busy.
Max?
Trips are busy, vacations are lazy.
Ooh, I like that one. Wes, what player type are you?
Thoughtful.
Mm-hmm.
Thoughtful.
I've
player.
noticed
Okay.
that.
All right, yeah.
Max, what
Yeah.
Max, what about you?
Robot. I would say we'll go feel.
Field player. All right, and this one you're both gonna take a little time. You can answer this one. You don't. It's not a speed round, and this can be about poker, or it can have something to do with anything other than poker. It doesn't have to be poker related at all. Actually, let's switch the order up here. Max, starting with you. Looking back on your life, what's one thing that you would do differently?
Oh man, probably a lot of things. One thing I would do differently, I would. I mean, is this poker related or anything?
Anything,
related?
anything, as long as it's true.
Nothing. I would do nothing
Nice.
different.
Yeah. Wes, what about you?
I actually like the answer of nothing, but the one that came to mind is I would take baseball a little bit more seriously in middle school and high school.
Mm-hmm. Good answer.
Oh, I would have kept my Bitcoin investments and not sold them.
Oh,
Big drop.
there
That's
you
what I
go.
would've done.
Yeah, that sounds like a good one too. All right, guys. Well, just tabulating the results here. Wes, you got 17 points, and Max, you got 3,064. So that's pretty good. A combined score of over 3,000 points. Way to go, guys! Awesome.
Let's
All
go.
Well, we're gonna start. If you want to type the words "food bank" into the YouTube chat there, we're gonna say goodbye to Wes and Max here in just a moment, and we'll do our raffle. We'll talk about some home game results. If you want to win a prize just for showing up, just type the words "food bank" into the chat, because food insecurity is something that affects a lot of people. Not always in the neighborhoods that you might think, not always the people that you might think. You never know who might need a little help putting food on the table or feeding their children or a loved one. So I encourage you, just pull out your phone and Google food banks near me. You'll find a organization in your area that can benefit from either a few dollars from your wallet, a few hours of your time, or some non-perishable food items from your own pantry. So I'd encourage people to do that, and just type the words food bank in the chat here. We'll give away a prize a little later in the show. Wes and Max, obviously the best thing that people could do to say thanks for coming on the RecPoker podcast would be to go check out the Suited Kings podcast and smash the subscribe button.
Yeah.
If folks want to get more Wes and Max in their lives, where do you like to be contacted? Is it social media, email, a website? Max, why don't you go first? Where can people
All
find
right.
you?
Yeah. On X or Twitter, at Deuce Nukem, DEUCENUKEM. Or you can email me, maxhavlish@gmail.com. And we love feedback from our podcast. We love people reaching out to us with questions regarding poker. Never hesitate in any way to pick my brain.
Right on.
Just real quickly, I love that handle. It's a Duke Nukem reference, right?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it was very, very nice.
Yeah, one of
Amazing.
the first games I played as a kid. Yeah.
Yeah, that took me back too.
He's
Wes,
also good at flopping sets of deuces.
I am.
Oh, all right,
I
all right.
Yeah, we nuke them. All right.
That's a good
Yeah.
skill. That's a good skill.
Um,
Wes, where can folks find you?
Yeah, Twitter X at Pitcher Cannon. So I don't have the app, but I go on there a lot because that's where we post our. I guess for me, that's where my poker community is, and
Yeah.
then I don't really pay a lot of attention to other social media. Always feel free, yeah, just like Max said, reach out, whether it's you have a question, even if you want to run a hand past us, suggestions for podcast ideas. Like if we like it, we'll probably end up doing it. We've had a couple of people do that so far also. So
Can I say two
Yeah.
quick things? Is that all right?
Absolutely not. No, of
all
course.
right. All right, cool. Thank you. Appreciate it. First off, no, I just want to say I really think it's cool that you guys do that philanthropy work for the food bank and stuff like that. If we can, help in any way, maybe team up in some way to do something like that, I would love to be involved in that.
Love that idea.
And then secondly, I think some value that you can extract from listening to a Suited Kings podcast is hearing the difference in thought between Wes and I. I mean, him and I both grew up learning in different ways of poker. He's a lot more of a theoretically approach, where I'm more about of a field player. So listening to our thoughts combined can kind of create a unique approach to it. And we hope you guys take a listen and enjoy it.
Right on. Well, I think if people take a listen, they're definitely going to enjoy it. So thanks, guys, for coming on the show. Thank you both for coming back on the show, I should say.
Yeah.
And
it was fun.
Thanks for having us.
Well, I don't want. I'm kind of breaking news here. We haven't worked out the details yet, but there's a very good chance we'll be doing another RecPoker event at Running Aces in January or February of this year. I hope if you're in town, we can see you there, and you'll have a cold beer in your hands, compliments of this guy. But in the meantime, thanks again for swinging by, and continue your amazing success in the poker world. It's been great watching you guys come on up. Good on you.
Thanks for the chat today. Appreciate it.
Appreciate that. Yeah, this is a lot of fun.
All right, fellas. Well, that's it. Max Havlish, Wesley Cannon, the Suited Kings podcast team. We're going to go talk to John Somsky about some upcoming or about some recent home game results. And I guess before I do that, I should mention that speaking of Running Aces, they've got their Mid-States Poker Tour event series coming up from November 30th to December 10th. There's going to be a ton of events happening there. I'm guessing you might even bump into these two over there at that point.
Just me, Wes.
And-
Wes is going to be in Vegas.
Oh, all right. There you go.
Oh.
Nice.
Yeah, I'll be at the Mystery Bounty at Aces, but I'm headed out to Vegas right after that.
Sweet. Well, I'm going to be down there myself. Maybe we'll bump into you on the casino floor against Wes. That'd be fun. Good luck on that, and travel safely.
Appreciate it.
All right. Well, if folks want to find out more about what's coming up at Running Aces, you can go to runaces.com, and thanks to them again for their support. John, why don't you take us through some home game result winners, and then we'll give away a prize here for folks that have typed food bank into the YouTube chat.
That sounds good to me. But one question first. I am dying to see the algorithm that you use to calculate the points during the question and answer section at the end of this, because I think dying minds want to know. We have 17 versus 3,000, and it's very precise. I'm very curious.
Well, I'll tell you, we're transparent about a lot of things here at RecPoker, but that one I'm going to keep behind the curtain for just a little bit longer because I'm still working out some of the kinks. But if anyone's familiar with a fantastic improv show called Whose Line Is It Anyway? Some of the older episodes with a guy, Clyde, something like that. I always enjoyed the way that he ran that show. So a little hat tip to Clive, I think was his name.
He keeps the formula in his basement and
Yeah.
a computer, so you just have to go down there to find it.
Come on over. Anyone who wants to see the formula could just come into the basement, and what happens in the basement stays in the basement. That's all I'm going to say about that.
So in other words, people you invite to your basement never leave.
I didn't
It's
say
like
that
a
at all.
Hotel California type of thing here.
What? That's a mad and rash allegation. I will not stand for this kind of libelous conversation coming out of you, John Somsky.
Well, on Monday, November 13th, we had our Tournament of Champions event, and Jasper Jr., Pat Barry, his very first Tournament of Champions, and won, of course, the coveted silver pin.
That's a good looking pin. That's
Philly,
silver one.
19341. Rich Deacons got his first nightly event victory.
There you go, Rich.
Woodworker 141 got his or her second nightly victory. Spot Conlon, Daniel Kennedy, got his 7th nightly victory for the year.
Can't stop Spot Conlon.
And now we have a few. I've had some issues with Poker Stars from repeating games, so we ended up with three mixed practice events this week by accident.
How exciting.
So the non-asterisk winner would be Killy 19341. Rich Deacons got his first mixed practice event victory. Keto Man 335, Keaton Tavicoli got his first asterisk victory for a mixed event. And Izanma got his first mixed victory as well. Wow. Then on to our international events. GF Hawk, Eric Romo got his first international victory for the year. E. Anderson 85 got his first international victory for the year. And then Torriner, Joshua Campbell won the LPP event, so he can contact info@rec.poker for his free month at Learn Pro Poker.
Yeah, congratulations to all our winners, but especially if you play on the Sunday, the home games are free to enter, but our Sunday night winner gets a free month at Learn Pro Poker every month. Josh, you're going to love it if you haven't already won. Josh is no stranger to the winner's circle around here, and nice to hear your voice again, Josh. Way to go. So is it time, gentlemen? Shall we roll the die of infamy and see who the winner is going to be this week, Chris?
I think so. I'm seeing 7 names on here. Are you seeing 7 names?
Let's go in order so there's no bamboozling. I see Ken, Mary, Bob, Jim, Steve, the RRRCCC, and Luke. That's the 7 that I see.
All right, I got an 8-sider.
And Joe has offered, if we roll an 8, he's going to donate $20 of his own money to the food bank of his choice.
All right, so we're just going to keep rolling 8s until we thank
I'll double that. I'll double that.
Oh, Max is going to match it. There we go. I love it.
So a lot of pressure to roll an 8. A lot of pressure to roll an 8. Here we go.
All right, come on.
It's a 2.
It's a 2. All right. It's Mary McHugh.
I'll still donate 20 if I can Venmo one of you guys.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, sweet, Max. Well, yeah. Joseph?
I usually just donate to the local. So if you've got a local food bank by you, that's just usually what I do. So
okay. Yeah. I'm
Thank
gonna
you,
hold
Max.
myself accountable for that then.
All right, awesome.
Yeah, perfect. So Mary, you know the drill. Great to see you back in the chat, by the way. And feel free to send that email to info@rec.poker. You've won a fantastic prize, and we'll sort out all the details over email there. And my thanks again to Rob Washam, who's been helping with a lot of the prize administration and some of this other stuff that goes on behind the scenes. So thanks, Rob. You've taken on another big piece of what goes on over here at RecPoker. Okay, well, fantastic. Well, thank you to Wes Cannon for joining us, and Max, this was fantastic. And Max, thanks again for showing that generosity of spirit and contributing along with Joe Coolis here to support a fantastic cause. Does any other Wrecking Crew members, is there anything else that we should be talking about? Rob, I guess we've got a new book study coming up. Why don't you tell some folks about what we're going to be studying next?
Yeah, we're going to be studying Exploitive Play in Live Poker by Alex Fitzgerald. So, We'll start that the first Wednesday of December, and keep an eye out either on social media, X, Twitter, whatever, or on the RecPoker website. We will be giving away a copy of the book to one lucky viewer or member or whatever. So keep an eye out for that. We'll have more information as we go.
Right on. That's going to be a good one. I was thinking about getting into that one myself. Yeah, Chris, you've got
Yeah,
something.
no, and
looks like.
actually, I do want to. I was thinking I don't, but so the deep dive, everyone, if you've been watching or following along, we've been doing we'll be kind of wrapping up our 5-month series of looking at tournament stages, and we're gonna do a really, I think, interesting playing session in December. This is based on a number of requests where. We're gonna on I think it's December 18th. We're doing it a week earlier than usual.
That's right. Yeah.
And we're gonna be instead of doing some tournament stages or tournament things, we've had a number of people kind of wondering about, kind of some of the questions we talked about today. Like, I'm interested in playing more cash, and I'm much more versed and experienced in tournaments. So this sessions we're gonna simulate a cash game. And we're going to talk about, okay, you're kind of more experienced in tournaments. What are some things you should be bringing into that cash game environment? So if that's something that's interesting to you, come join us December 18th in that playing session. We'll get the sign up going as soon as this the last one wraps up in November. Mark it on your calendars. We hope to get you there because I think that'll be one that a lot of our members will be interested in.
Yeah, I think so too. I'm looking forward to that. And if you're watching this live, as soon as we get all closed off here, we're going to be meeting to record our forums edition of the podcast. And premium members are welcome to join us live over Zoom for that recording session. If you're a premium member and you're watching this live, just head on over to the homepage and click on the calendar event that's starting at 9 o'clock Eastern and come join us for some strategy chat in the forums edition. Also, Chris is having his monthly wrap-up session this week on Wednesday at 7:30, where we'll be reviewing the play from last month's deep dive, kind of going hand by hand and street by street through the action. Again, if you're a premium member, get involved and jump in. It's going to be a fun week. Otherwise, I think I would just say happy Thanksgiving, everybody. I hope you get a chance to enjoy some turkey and some family fun and maybe a NFL game or something like that. We got some really nice comments from everybody in the YouTube chat here. Thanks, everybody. That's really kind to hear. Love getting that kind of support, and I really appreciate that feedback. It warms our heart to see it. So thank you to the Running Aces Hotel, Racetrack, and Casino. And if you want to help support what we're doing here, you don't have, being a premium member is definitely the best way to help, but I understand that's not for everybody. If you go to rec.poker/support, you can find some other ways to help us out without spending a dime. And we need all the help we can get, folks. So I do appreciate everyone who wants to get more involved and chip in some way. We'll take it. There's room for you here, I promise. Well, thanks again to Max and Wes. That was a treat. To Rob Washam, Joe Coolis, John Somsky, and Chris Jones. I'll just give the Running Aces Hotel, Racetrack, and Casino one more shout out because they're the best. And everyone who joined us in the YouTube chat today. Is so much more fun getting folks in the YouTube chat. So thanks for that. And you, the listeners at home, we wouldn't do it without you. So thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week on the RecPoker Podcast.